everybody, it's Ike from Flipside Music, and welcome to What the F.A.Q. Season 3, Episode 41. Week before Turkey Day, right?
Is it 2 weeks or one?
Yeah, next week.
It is? Okay.
Yeah. And I'm here, as always, with
Dylan.
And we are here for your questionable
answers.
Yes.
We're here for some questionable answers.
Right. Weekly question and answer show. You ask a question, we answer said question right here from Flipside Music, Great American Guitar Store. Yes.
On the Platte River.
Yeah. New shop. Still working on it. We still haven't gotten the echoey bit
A bit.
controlled yet, but we're getting there.
The mic hasn't been picking it up too much, I don't think so.
It's not as bad as the first. Well, that's because we got that shit over there. But we did get some sound absorption panels in, and I'll be working on a video once I actually get a chance to start building those things. We have to assemble
the materials.
Yeah. So.
Well, cool.
That's.
Right, that's the wrong one. That maybe that was part of it.
All right, pick out our first question.
All right, so first one. Let's see. We got a few. Let's go with Professor Chaos.
Professor Chaos.
He's asking preferences on cabs. How good are the Rev cabs compared to other brands? And are there any cabs in the shop that we particularly like or that people tend to sleep on?
I mean, cabs I like in general. I like the orange cabs. Those are decent.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're a good baseline. I feel like Mesas are better personally, but I do think orange establishes a good baseline, like expectation of what like a good cabinet should be.
Yeah, I like those. I like the Dr. Z cabinets. Mm-hmm. The Rev cabinets that we have had, I thought sounded great. Mm-hmm. And then classic Marshall ones. Are
you still can't beat like the 1960s.
Depends. Yeah, the 1960 series is always good. It kind of depends on what you're going for and what you're throwing them through. That little cab we got with the 210s, with the Jensens. Mm-hmm. It's a nice little cab.
It is. Yeah, I was going to say that is the big thing is depending on what you're playing, that's going to determine how focused you need your low end. So that ends up changing, or at least for me, that changes the speaker choice you'd want and then how big the physical cabinet is. Because if you want to push a lot of low end, having like an oversized cab is a lot of fun. And that's basically what Orange has done, is basically just made the oversized cabinet the cabinet.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little more huevos.
Yes.
But yeah, I still think Mesa, if you can get them used, I think, new pricing is pretty up there. But if you can get a used Mesa cabinet, those are really tough to beat in terms of build quality for like the more mass-produced stuff. But I'd still honestly Atlas cabinets in terms of
Atlas cabs are good.
If you're local, or even not local, he'll ship now. But they're another one if you want like an heirloom quality cabinet, like one that you could literally, hand down for generations, pretty much.
This was Grandpa Jebediah's 412.
Grandpappy's 412.
He used to rock it back when.
Used to ride these all the way to the horizon.
We put this, it was in the back of when they all headed west.
Yeah, that's why the Model Ts, not many people know that the Model Ts go back to the original Model Ts.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, those are the big ones for sure. At the end of the day, as long as it's a good Baltic birch cabinet with good speakers, I think that's where most companies are at these days. So, unless you really want to go for something distinct like pine, like a vintage cabinet of some kind. But because pine cabinets are pretty cool. Like we have some oddball 70s cabinet that rolled in with some old Jensens, and the thing actually sounds great for just being a little compact 212 made out of pine. It actually sounds really good.
Remember that DIY jobber we had 5 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't give that thing.
Yeah.
It had realistic speakers in it. Remember? It had from Radio Shack.
Oh, yeah. Because, for a while we kept trying to figure out if he tried to replace it.
We're trying to give it away to
Yeah, because we couldn't figure out if he replaced it with car speakers or actual speakers.
Yeah, I don't remember how we obtained that. How did we even get that? Was that a freebie?
No, I think it was thrown in on that deal with, what's her face? Where with all the odd shit, all the weird solid state preamp. And, I think it was part of that deal. Yeah.
That's true. That was
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Yeah. All right. Tim White is asking, when can we come hit big loud, or when can we come in and hit some big loud chords in the new space? So he wants to come make some noise right here.
Right here. I don't know. You let me know.
Well, Tim's, yeah.
You want to come over and...
I was going to say, you're a friend. Yeah, you just book a time with us.
Yeah, just call us up and we'll figure it out.
You can go
We're
hog
here
wild
on
over
Tuesdays.
Here. Yeah, that's true too.
So if you want to come in on a Tuesday, we'll give you the nickel tour.
Yeah.
And then you can,
can blast an amp to your heart's
make some
content.
noise.
Yeah. I feel like I'm having a hard time with sentences today. I don't know. Maybe we're both just short circuiting.
Yeah. I know this week's been a rough week. Yeah, this has been a tough week.
Yeah.
It's only Tuesday.
All right, Metalhead Hippie. I actually haven't had a question from him in a little bit.
Sweet. What's happening?
He is asking, what is the biggest single-use pedal ever made? So I think he means like a single, only does one thing. Not single-use, because I'm thinking like single-use pedals, that would suck. But I think he means like a single function. Like what's the...
Just overdrive?
Yeah, like just overdrive or just delay or, just one function. So he's asking basically that functions on 18 volts and under, and it could be any style. He just wants to know like the biggest physical pedal.
Oh, like the largest pedal.
Single that only does one thing. Yeah. Honestly, I part of me wants to go with the BK Butler tube driver. Yeah. Just because like not only is it wide, but it's really long and just really difficult to fit on any board. I'm sure there's others.
Line 6 delay.
Oh yeah,
Is it
the DL4s? Yeah.
That might be
that's up there for sure.
Because that's a good sized pedal.
No, that's up there for
delay.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would definitely fit. I feel like Jake would know for sure because he has a tendency to buy like oversized pedals. Because honestly, like a Black Russian Big Muff is gigantic too. Like they're huge. Yeah, those things are huge.
Good sized pedal.
Yeah.
That's a no joke pedal.
Right. Well, no, even Electro Harmonics, like the old school '70s ones, like the big format ones, those were all pretty decent size. Maybe not as big as the DL4. You're right. I think Line 6 might take the cake.
I think I might have got one.
Oh, okay.
Surfy Bear. The Surfy Bear.
Oh, yeah.
Reverb. The reverb pedal.
Was that Dano? The Dano, or was it Surfy?
No, it's Surfy Bear.
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
they reached out to us recently.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, because I've heard about them for a while, but
that does bring up the Dano, that spring, the kick one.
The Dano spring.
Yeah. That's another one that's gigantic and like only does one thing.
Yeah. So the Surfy Bear stuff is pretty cool. So we may be looking into that after the first.
Yeah, because those are almost like rack unit sized.
Well,
they're basically a spring tank.
They make smaller ones too.
Yeah.
But it's basically like a spring tank in a small box. Smaller box.
You know what would be cool and weird? If somebody made a pedal board that was a spring tank.
Oh, you could do that.
Like that would be kind of cool. Like
you totally could do that.
Yeah, you could easily, because I feel like there's more than enough space. That wouldn't really be that hard.
But, okay, so here's the problem though.
Every time you turn a pedal on and off?
Every time you touch the pedal, you're going to get spring rattle, and it's going to drive you absolutely ape shit.
That is true. It'd still be sort of fun.
But I know
you're right.
I'm like, no.
Or even like a really, really tiny plate reverb.
Yeah, but plate reverbs, the bigger the better.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. It'd just be funny. Yeah.
Back in like Memphis and stuff, the old school.
Yeah, that one that's the whole wall of the studio.
2 stories tall. So.
Yeah.
Put that in. I'm sure there's other ones. If you guys know of any giant one-use pedal, throw it in there.
Yeah, I think we hit most of the really obnoxiously huge pedals. Let's see.
But then you got old memory boys.
That's what I'm saying. Like the old school electro.
The old school electro, all that stuff is pretty sizable. I mean, even the Big Muff, the old.
Yeah, they still make that thing, and it's still obnoxious for the size.
Yeah. Because there's nothing in it.
Right. Yeah, the board is that.
There's
tall.
nothing in it.
Yeah. All right. Next one is from Terry GGG, or 3Gs. He was asking. Oh, never mind. No, it wasn't a question, just a comment. So never mind.
Never mind.
No, never mind, Terry. Next one is Nothing Here. This one's a discussion. This one's actually a good question.
All right.
Have you ever tried to chase an artist's tone and finally given up because you could never get there? What tone were you chasing, and what was the equipment that you tried to use to get there? So, like, is there any particular person you ever did the tone? Because I feel like everybody has one, and then you get past it eventually, but everybody has at least one that they start with.
I think for me it was like Stevie Ray back in the day.
Yeah.
And it was just because I had a Strat, had a Fender amp.
Well, and
But
like
I didn't know the nuances of, I didn't know, this was when you're younger. I didn't know about Tube Screamer.
Right.
I also didn't know that half of that shit was just cranked. So there was a lot of elements of that didn't fit into what I had. Plus, I didn't have.
Well, because his tone is
some of that stuff that he was doing.
But his tone is difficult because it's like big and clean.
Right, and the string gauge and all that stuff. So that was one that now I could probably throw that together fairly easy because I know exactly what the
ingredients are.
Yeah, I know what the components are. So it's like Strat, string gauge,
right,
Tube Screamer, amplifier, basement, like all that stuff. Put that into a pot and we can make that sound. But that was one because I was young and I didn't know and I was broke and it wasn't like I had money to try stuff.
Right.
So that was, I would say that was it for me.
Well, in his tone, like, because, you're right, like, even if you get the ingredients, though, his tone is still one of those ones that's just, because, like, it's driven, and yet it sounds very clean. Like, you hear every detail of every single thing. Because, like, especially when you listen to him on headphones, like, you can hear his hands moving, you can hear the grip, you can hear the pick attack. Like, so it's not...
the ringing, like, you could hear that E string ring out.
Right.
Like when he hits that...
It has a bell kind of sound to it.
Yeah, and there's stuff to it, and you're like, damn, like, it's clear. There's another artist, too, if I could throw one out there on top of that.
Okay.
I think a big one that a lot of people probably did this search for was, like, Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big one, too, is, like, trying to get his tone, how he did it, even though
he was
we
one of the
would all
first.
Read about what he used and the Variac and the
Well, it brings up a
Marshalls.
because he was, like, the first dude to... Like, he knew people were doing that, so then he started just throwing out bullshit.
Right.
Which is funny, because, like, even the amp, like, the Variac had more to do with it than any mods, because, his Marshall, I don't think he actually modded very heavily. It was pretty much the Variac that was doing a lot of that weird, like the brown sound.
The saggy.
Yeah, that squish. Yeah.
And then you got the pickup that he used, because the original one had like a 335 pickup in it, but then it was also, we're just going directly, just the volume knob, no tone.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you're right, no capacity, you're right, yeah, nothing.
Just
just wide open, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that would be another artist that a lot of people have kind of chased that tone.
Well, yeah, but even for you, like, that one does make sense.
Yeah.
For me, first one was definitely Hetfield. So I was definitely going for, like, that crushing... Well, because, like, when I first got into it, and everybody's calling his tone on, like, the Black Album the God tone, because it was so, like, thick and heavy, I was like, well, then it's got to be... Like, you got to go for that. But I didn't know that the real key to Hetfield's sound is quad tracking. So it's like he's just... incredibly good at just redoing the same thing to where it sounds monstrous. Yeah. So that part of it...
he's playing through Mesa Boogies too, right?
Yeah, and that was like the whole thing that got me started with Mesas. Well, him, and even though I'm not like a huge... It's weird, I have an issue with Dream Theater, because it's like I love the band, like the band members, I don't love the singer. So it's like, for me, like, I love the way Dream Theater sounds as a group, like the musicians are amazing, but I can't deal with the vocal side. But yeah, Petrucci and Hetfield at the time were like the dudes for Mesa. So that got me into that side of it, and I still love Mesas, I just don't necessarily dial them in to do like the Metallica sound anymore, because I found my own sound in there that I like a lot more. But the other one for me would be Iommi, and I would say that I've kind of I've met somewhere in the middle of the two, and like for me it works because now I feel like it still sounds like an old school setup, because like to me I love the sound of like those older albums where there was less shit going on and less things clouding it. But on the other
layers of processing, because that's a lot of times when I listen to more modern stuff, regardless whatever you want to call that modern metal,
right?
Because everything has been so segmented now. a lot of it just sounds so very processed to me, and it's
Yes.
not. And yeah, I'm old, whatever. But I like it when you have a band that it has that raw vibe.
Well, no, yeah, because
Even though
I was gonna say,
local,
it's not an
Cloud
old.
Catcher kind of has, it's just
Right.
raw. It's loud amplifiers, and it's just
Yeah, it's the old school way
Yeah.
done in a modern context or a modern
Yeah.
form. And yeah, I love that part of things because, yeah, to me, like, you know, it's weird because, like, with the Metallica tone, like, I still think, you know, what, 30 some years later, that is the definitive kind of studio metal tone. It's like there are not many bands that will ever make an album that sounds sonically anything close to that album, I think. But on the other side of it, it also it kind of opened the door for people to try to get, like, it was almost like an arms race. Like Metallica beat everybody to the punch in terms of sounding like bigger than life, and then everybody started, because even like
well, Megadeth though kind of falls in that same.
well, yeah, but they don't have that just wall of sound.
Well,
like,
that's where you're.
yeah.
That's what you're saying. Where
Yeah.
you're quad tracking it, and then you'll see that same thing with Billy Gibbons.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Because I always wondered
How does he sound so
how does
big?
he get
Yeah.
that sound?
Right.
Until I started reading like that, you know, he's just doing a lot of overdubs and stuff like
Right.
that. And it's just making it bigger and.
Yeah, because like
Fatter.
on the Black album, they actually had like this weird baritone guitar that was just called the Thickener, and they just threw it on. They threw it on every one of the
It
tracks.
was like a roux.
yeah,
mixing.
It's like some cornstarch or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, they threw that on like everything just to make it sound, because like you can listen to the isolated tracks from like Sad But True and some of those, and it's like you know for sure like no single guitar anywhere is ever gonna sound quite like that as the sum of the parts. It's never gonna sound like that just on its own. But yeah, for me, like I think everybody starts with that, like trying to pursue somebody else's tone, and then eventually you find yourself somewhere in there, and you kind of move past that shit.
Yeah, and then you can experiment from there. So
Yeah.
I mean, with me, I just gave up. I'm like, I just play what I play, and I dial in what I think I like. And I don't do a lot of heavy stuff anyway, but you know, I mean, you've heard me with drive and
Right.
this and that, and I always end up going back with like
Well, it's
a drive,
yeah.
a nice gritty drive pedal, or a nice amp that has an overdrive.
Well,
and
to go
that
full
kinda
circle
fits
on
in
that
there.
though, that does make sense. That's because you kind of ended up more in the Stevie vein. Because like even though you don't play like Stevie stuff, like you're not trying to do the sound-alike thing, you do have that kind of sweet bell-like kind of sustain that he had. That I've always kind of thought, like even though you don't do like the Stevie licks all the time, you still have that more signature, open, kind of clean tone.
And that's what
Yeah.
that's kind of what I like, because I hear so much stuff when I go to like blues jams, or even just other players. I really like the players that have where their guitar jumps through.
Yeah.
And it's just very, very present, because
Yeah.
there are players out there that they're like, here, I'm playing this blues stuff, but I could hear that it's so processed, and that's how.
Or so compressed, or yeah.
Or it's processed or compressed, and it's like I know what they're going for, but I just don't. It becomes that. There's a lot of YouTube guys out there that all sound the same to me. Like it's all that same overdriven. It's almost like It's almost like a worship tone is what I.
Yeah, no, it is. Like by the time
like
you
a lot
put
of
it
the
through
worship
enough stuff, it
guys.
sounds like a digital computerized tone.
And so I don't know.
Well, but there is that argument too. Like to me, I do feel like there's a lot of people that are pursuing classic tones with modern gear, but to me, like sometimes it's not that there's only one way to do something, but sometimes when you're trying to get a sound like is it. Like when it boils down to like you said with the Stevie rig, even that's 3 components really.
Yeah,
it's a guitar, an amp, and a pedal, one pedal, and it's like you can basically get there, but it's like once if you add all that other shit on there and you're trying to gussy it up even more, like you start to lose what made it that sound.
You lose a bit of the punch,
Right.
Because I listen to some of the old blues guys, and it's just some of their tone it's raw. It's nothing more than that Telecaster or whatever you name the instrument into an amplifier of unknown origin,
Right.
And you're like that sound, and there's so many different types of that it just sounds so good.
Well, yeah, and I think sometimes you just can't, other than doing it similar to the way they did it, you just can't. You can get close, for sure. But I do also think, like, as digital amps and things have become more prevalent, people have started to lose some of that that old school grit and that old school kind of raw sound.
That's why I go to a blues jam and just plug it into an amp.
Right.
Oh, I don't have enough time to put my. Well, it's funny when they're like, oh, it's my blues board. Why do you have 9 pedals on your blues board? That's just a lot. Now I get it, overdrive, boost, maybe a couple overdrives, but then you start getting into all these other delays and everything. And not saying it doesn't sound good, but I realize like some of the guys are just smaller boards, like Matt Schofield. Doesn't have a lot on his board, but man, it's a really great sound. He's got delay and reverb and this and that, but it sounds great. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing too. Like even like it made me feel a bit better because my board obviously has gotten out of control. But Jake was like, well, yeah, but it was cool because Jake, and you've even said it before too, that like even with as much shit as I'm running, it doesn't sound like a digital.
Yeah, it still sounds pretty raw.
Right. Yeah.
It's raw power in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Raw power.
Sunday.
Yeah. At the Thunderdome.
Dylan's raw power.
See his 4x15 crush. Yeah, just
crush your little Pro Junior. Wimpy.
Hefty. Yeah.
Wimpy. Okay.
I think.
What else we got? Anything?
Yeah, I think Ben Coombs is our last one.
Ben Coombs,
the Coomster,
Canadian YouTuber.
Question for this week is: do either of you own a guitar with a Bigsby, and what are your thoughts on them? Yes and yes.
And I just got one yesterday.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you just got one.
Just got one yesterday with a Bigsby on it, and I have my Texas Toast Duchess that has a Bigsby on it.
Yes. And honestly, that's still.
Those are the only 2 that I have.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one's still like. That was a good move with that one because like that, I don't know, that guitar all the way around just looks cool.
That guitar is one of my favorites.
I was gonna say I actually love Bigsby's because I don't think other Trems
do what they do.
Yeah, they don't sound all fluttery. It's like it's a smooth kind of flutter that Bigsby's do, and it's actually kind of interesting because I feel like it's harder to actually hear it when you're playing too gainy. Because like Floyd's, they go far enough and they go wild enough that like you immediately know like they're kicking that in. Mm-hmm. Bigsby's are so subtle that I feel like to really get that nice flutter is better like when it's just a little bit cleaner.
And I agree and that's really my point was going to be on that too. Is that like the Bigsby's got just a smoothness to it that you don't get with a Floyd. Like a Floyd, it's almost kind of, let's go with like a Ferrari type thing.
Yeah.
You hit the gas and wow, you're gone.
Right.
Whereas this is not quite Ferrari. This is like, I'm kind of getting there, guy.
Well, and with the Bigsby, like you gotta commit to, because you usually really gotta work, because most Bigsby's too, you gotta overcompensate and pull back before you let it go back to normal because you don't want to go out of tune or anything. And I think that is probably what he meant about thoughts on them in terms of, I feel like people do gripe about Bigsby's going out of tune a lot, but I think if you address like any binding in the nut,
get your nuts unbound.
Yes, get your nuts shorn, and then get a roller bridge. And I think, at least from my experience, but it's only been with pickles. But in my experience,
that's what I have in the Duchess.
Right, and that solves I think it solves all of those issues.
Yeah. Well, if you get,
because pickles is like rock solid all the time. Like never goes out of tune. I can come back days and days later when there's been wild temperature changes, especially like this time of year, and pickles is always like ready to go.
That's the way my Texas Toast is too.
Yeah.
Same way. It's solid, but roller bridge, and I think what we put in there was a lubricated, self-lubricating nut. So if you keep your nuts lubricated all the time, you don't have any problems.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think they're a lot of fun, and I actually think they're almost the Trem for guys that don't need a Trem. And the only thing I mean by that is like the guys that maybe, they have a Trem on something, but they barely ever use it, and they just throw it there for like an accent. Like I think that's where Bigsby shine is like, it feels like you're playing a normal kind of tune-o-matic style bridge, but you still get the option to do a little bit of those fluttery things when you want to. So,
and I just bought a 2013 Epiphone 355, which is basically, it's kind of like a dot, same setup. But it does have block inlays
in the big
panel in blue, and a Bigsby. And that's why, and part of the reason is, I think that I bought it was, well, I might have had a whiskey drink or two. And it was a good deal. And I watched some dude play on an Epiphone with a Bigsby, and he was doing all this really cool stuff, and he was doing not what I would consider a dive bomb, but maybe a slow, gentle type of bombing maneuver.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because he was doing it with a Bigsby, and just the way he manipulated the Bigsby, it was really, really smooth, and it sounded great. It was more on the blues side of things. It was a blue, almost like a Black Keys-ish kind of feel.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah.
You know, in that vein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But still very, very clean.
Right.
And it was pretty killer, and I think that all was really good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think
that's why I bought that guitar, just letting you guys know.
Yeah, well, and I think the subtlety of Bigsby's is where they shine. I think it's, again, like I said, I think it's the trem for guys that don't necessarily want to commit to, you know, the pains that can come with a Floyd.
Yeah.
And also just the guys that, you know, because I mean, I think like Bigsby's on tellies are another one that sounds like amazing.
It's one I don't have, and I was thinking about the same thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind doing that because a lot of Bigsby's, I got a friend of mine that has Bigsby on one of his tellies, and I do feel that, you know, it adds a little bit of, because you're putting more mass on it, it adds a little bit extra to the tonality of the guitar. So
Yeah.
I would say yes.
Yeah, I
I
think
we
they're
just
great.
went dead again.
Oh, did we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Same as last week. Bah, bah, bah.
Good eye, because I can't, like, just because of the angle, I can't.
Right back at it. And what's great that you did last week was the fact that you still had the audio running.
I know, that's what I had to do, yeah.
It's just screen went black. And
Yeah.
We'll do it again.
Well, that's why I thought funny too, because I'm like, nobody else was gonna change, but I put our names there.
Yeah.
Just because it was funny.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, well,
All right.
that, and I guess Tim thought it was for the. Well, yeah, because
Oh, the commentary underneath.
Yeah, because
like,
my
everything
way.
went to shit this week.
Yeah,
it was. Last week was rough. This week is turning.
Yeah.
Not as bad, but it's been an odd.
It's been an odd week, but yeah, I feel like today in particular has been way easier than last Tuesday. Last Tuesday
was a struggle.
Yeah, like every step of every single thing was a fight. Yeah, it was unbelievable. But.
Which is fairly normal for our existence.
Yeah, but it was just like a few
the-
too many with
Yeah.
like too many time deadlines, like all stacking up all at the same time, and then even just trying to get home after we thought, well, like everything else had finally worked, and then trying to get home
was a nightmare. It took
so,
you
yeah.
forever to get home.
Yeah.
It took me forever to get back to my house too. So, yeah. Well, but in the old days, we didn't have nearly as much stress. We did, but we didn't. Now it's different because we have like a lot more shit that needs to get done.
Yeah, and things
now it's like-
come up a lot quicker than they used to.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah.
And we're rambling on. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys sticking around this long if you have. And we'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Yeah.